The first thing Kendall Williams felt was warmth. An unfamiliar heavy warmth pressed against her back. A strong arm wrapped possessively around her waist, pulling her flush against a solid, muscular body. For a second, she let herself sink into it, into the comfort of being held, into the faint scent of sandalwood and something uniquely him. Then reality hit. Her eyes flew open. No. No, no, no. She squeezed them shut again, as if she could turn this moment into a dream. But the weight of the arm didn't disappear. The steady rise and fall of his chest against her back didn't stop. And when she finally gathered the courage to turn her head, she found herself staring into a pair of dark, almond-shaped eyes. Eyes she knew as well as her own. Jaewoo. Her breath caught. No, 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 I am dreaming, she whispered, her voice hoarse from sleep. She pinched herself, half expecting to jolt awake in her own bed alone. But the sting of pain only confirmed the impossible truth. She was in bed with Jaewoo Park, Minji's little brother. Her best friend's little brother. Panic clawed at her throat. She tried to pull away, but his arm only tightened, as if he had no intention of letting her go. For one traitorous second, she let herself relax into his hold, just long enough to remember the way his hands had felt on her skin last night, the way his mouth had moved against hers, the way her body still ached with the memory of him. Then the guilt crashed over her like a wave. What the hell have I done? She scrambled for the sheets, yanking them up to cover herself as if they could shield her from the weight of her own actions. Jaewoo, ever the picture of calm, just lay there, propped up on one elbow, watching her with an intensity that made her pulse spike. His dark eyes were unreadable, but the smirk playing at the corners of his lips was infuriatingly knowing. Don't tell me you've already forgotten why we ended up here, he said, his voice low, amused. Kendall averted her gaze, heat oozing her cheeks. Of course she remembered. How could she forget? It had started as a celebration. Their first major contract, her first major contract. The trip was supposed to be a week-long getaway with Minji. Her best friend canceled because her child was sick, and she secretly asked Jaewoo to take her spot. You deserve this more than I do, Minji had said. Besides, you'll have more fun without me. Kendall had laughed at the time. How wrong she'd been. The club had been loud, the music thrumming through her veins, the champagne making everything feel lighter, freer. And then he had appeared. A smooth-talking stranger with a smile that promised trouble. She'd been about to decline his offer to dance when Jaewoo had materialized out of nowhere. His expression dark, his voice firm as he'd stepped between them. She's with me. Kendall had laughed, rolling her eyes. Since when? Jaewoo had just smirked, his fingers brushing against hers. Since now. And then. She swallowed hard. And then one challenge had led to another. One touch had ignited something neither of them could ignore. And suddenly they weren't just dancing. They weren't just anything. They were tangled in each other, in a way that felt both wrong and so right it terrified her. And now here they were. Kendall exhaled sharply, pressing her palms to her eyes. This was a mistake. Jaewoo's smirk faded just a little. Was it? She didn't answer. She couldn't. Not when her body still hummed with the memory of his touch. Not when her mind was screaming at her to run. Because Jaewoo wasn't just Minji's little brother. He was off limits. And she had just crossed a line she could never uncross. 6 years ago. The first time Park Jaewoo realized he was in love with Kendall Williams, he was 17 and she was 26, standing in his family's kitchen, laughing at something his sister Minji had said. The sunlight streaming through the window caught the gold in her dark brown eyes, and for a moment Jaewoo forgot how to breathe. It was absurd, of course. Kendall had been a fixture in his life for as long as he could remember. She was Minji's best friend, the one who braided his sister's hair before school dances, who scolded him for tracking mud into the house, who always brought him a slice of cake at family gatherings because she knew it was his favorite. She was herself warm, effortlessly elegant, and utterly untouchable. And yet, that day as Kendall reached for a glass from the cabinet, her sleeve rode up just enough to reveal the faintest scar on her wrist, something he'd never noticed before. It was a tiny, imperfect mark on her otherwise flawless skin, and Jaewoo found himself staring, wondering about the story behind it. When she turned and caught his gaze, her eyebrows lifted in silent question. He looked away quickly, heat creeping up his neck. You okay, Jaewoo? Minji asked, nudging him with her elbow. You look like you've seen a ghost. Fine, he muttered, shoving his hands into his pockets. Just thinking. Kendall smiled at him, soft and knowing, as if she could see straight through the lie. About what? About you. About how I can't stop thinking about you. About how I'm pretty sure this is the worst idea I've ever had. Nothing, he said instead, forcing a shrug. Just school stuff. Minji rolled her eyes. Boring. Kendall, tell him he needs to live a little. He's too serious for his own good. Kendall laughed, the sound like a melody Jaewoo wanted to memorize. I don't know, Minji. There's something to be said for seriousness. It means he pays attention. Jaewoo's chest tightened. Did she mean that? Or was he just hearing what he wanted to hear? As the afternoon wore on, he stole glances at her. How she tilted her head when she listened, the way her fingers tapped absently against her thigh when she was deep in thought. He noticed everything suddenly, as if his brain had decided to catalog every detail of her for future reference. And then, as if the universe wanted to punish him for his thoughts, Kendall ruffled his hair like she had when he was a kid. You're growing up too fast, Jaewoo, she said, her voice warm but tinged with something he couldn't place. Regret? Nostalgia? Don't rush it. Jaewoo swallowed hard. If only she knew how much he wished he could. Present day in the hotel room. Kendall didn't breathe until the bathroom door clicked shut behind her. The cool tile beneath her feet grounded her, but the reflection in the mirror was a stranger's, wild-eyed lips still swollen from his kisses, her dark skin flushed in places she didn't want to name. She pressed her palms to the sink, her mind racing. Minji's brother. The words echoed in her skull like a curse. Minji, who had been her rock since they were teenagers. Minji, who had cried on her shoulder after her first heartbreak, who had defended her when the small town's whispers turned cruel, who had trusted her implicitly. And now? Now Kendall had betrayed that trust in the most intimate way possible. She turned on the faucet, splashing cold water on her face as if it could wash away the guilt. It couldn't. Nothing could. The door creaked open behind her. She didn't need to look to know it was Jaewoo. His presence was like a current, pulling at her even when she willed herself to resist. She heard the rustle of fabric as he dressed, the quiet zip of a bag. He didn't speak. Didn't dare to, maybe. Or maybe he just knew, like she did, that words would only make it worse. When she finally turned, he was standing by the window, his back to her, the morning light outlining his broad shoulders. He was no longer the lanky teenager she remembered, the boy who had trailed after Minji like a shadow. Time had carved him into something else, something dangerous, something she wasn't supposed to notice. But she had. And now she couldn't unsee it. She avoided him for the rest of the morning, packed her things in silence, moved through the hotel lobby like a ghost, her mind already spinning with the logistics of damage control. They worked together, God, they worked together. Their company, the one they'd built with Jaewoo's two friends, Malik and Jason, was their shared dream. How was she supposed to face him every day, knowing what they'd done? Knowing how good it had felt? The restaurant was nearly empty when she slipped into a corner booth, her coffee untouched in front of her. She needed to think. Needed to breathe. But the moment Jaewoo slid into the seat across from her, the air between them thickened, charged with everything they weren't saying. He didn't look at her at first. Just stirred his coffee, his jaw tight. Then, finally, his dark eyes lifted to hers, and the intensity in them made her stomach twist. You're overthinking, he said, his voice low. Kendall let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You have no idea what I'm thinking. I know you're regretting it. His fingers tapped against the table, restless. I can see it. She opened her mouth to deny it, but the lie died on her tongue. Of course she regretted it. Not the feeling of it, the way his hands had mapped her body like she was something precious, the way his breath had hitched when she touched him, but the reality of it. The consequences. Jaewoo, she said, her voice breaking. You're Minji's brother. The words hung between them, heavy and final. His expression darkened, a flicker of something raw passing through his eyes, pain maybe. Or frustration. I know exactly who I am, he said. His voice edged with something she'd never heard from him before. Bitterness. And I know who you think I am. The kid you had to babysit. The little brother you had to protect. Kendall flinched. That's not. It is, he cut in, leaning forward. You've spent years treating me like I was fragile. Like I was less. And last night, his voice dropped rough. Last night you saw me. For the first time you saw me. And now you're acting like it was a mistake. Her chest ached. It was a mistake, she said. Was it? His gaze burned into hers. Or is it just easier to call it that than to admit you felt it too? She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he was wrong, that this was just lust, just a moment of weakness. But the way her heart pounded when he looked at her like that, like she as the only thing in the world worth seeing, told her the truth. She had felt it. And that was the problem. Kendall exhaled, rubbing her temples. Jaewoo, please. This can't happen again. We can't do this. Minji would. She stopped, the thought too painful to finish. Minji would be devastated. Their families, who had been neighbors for decades, who shared holidays and secrets and unspoken bonds. This would shatter them. And her friends, the ones who knew her struggles, her past, the reasons she'd sworn off complicated relationships. What would they think? Jaewoo's expression shuddered, his usual mask sliding back into place. But not before she caught the hurt in his eyes. I know, he said quietly. The words settled between them, a truce. A surrender. Kendall swallowed hard. And we can't let anyone know. Not Minji. Not our families. Not anyone. Jaewoo's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I won't say anything. She should have felt relieved. But all she felt was the weight of the secret pressing down on her. Heavier than before. 'Cause now she knew. Jaewoo wasn't just Minji's little brother. And she wasn't just his sister's best friend. And no amount of silence could change that. The office was a minefield. Kendall had always prided herself on her professionalism. Her ability to compartmentalize, to focus. But now, every time Jaewoo walked into the room, her pulse betrayed her. His presence was like a magnet, pulling her gaze against her will. The way his dress shirt clung to the ridges of his abdomen when he reached for a file. The way his thighs strained against his slacks as he leaned over a desk. The way his lips, his lips, curved into that infuriating, knowing smirk whenever he caught her staring. She wasn't the only one affected. The air between them crackled, thick with something unspoken, something hungry. Their co-workers didn't seem to notice, but Kendall felt it like a second skin. Every glance, every brush of his fingers when he handed her a document, every lingering second when their eyes met across the room. She hated it. She craved it. And that was the worst part. Kendall had been avoiding Minji since they'd returned from the trip. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. They ran into each other at the cafe down the street from the office, Minji's laughter ringing out as she waved Kendall over. Kendall's stomach twisted, but she forced a smile, sliding into the booth across from her best friend. You look exhausted, Minji said, eyeing her with concern. Did the trip wear you out? Or was it just that boring without me? Kendall's fingers tightened around her coffee cup. You know me. Always working, even on vacation. Minji grinned. Please. You never work on vacation. Unless. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. Unless there was no one worth your time. Kendall's breath hitched. Oh God. Minji laughed, oblivious to the way Kendall's heart had lodged itself in her throat. I'm just kidding. Though I did hear Jaewoo had a good time. Maybe he was the one keeping you busy. Kendall's mouth fell open, her mind racing. Did Minji know? But then Minji waved a hand, dismissing her own joke. Oh, don't look so shocked. My brother's a charm. But even he wouldn't be stupid enough to hit on you. Kendall forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow even to her own ears. Yeah, of course not. Minji studied her for a long moment, her expression softening. You okay? You seem off. Kendall nodded too quickly. Just tired. Long week. Minji didn't push, but Kendall could feel her friend's gaze lingering, assessing. For a terrifying second, she thought Minji saw it. The guilt, the longing, the secret coiled in her chest like a serpent. But then Minji sighed, shaking her head. Well, try to relax. Can't have you burning out on me. Kendall exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. Minji didn't know. Thank God. But as she walked back to the office, her mind was already spinning with a new, more pressing question. How the hell am I supposed to look Minji in the eye now? The tension at work only grew worse. Every day it was the same. Jaewoo's dark eyes tracking her movements, the way his voice dropped an octave when he spoke to her, the way his body seemed to lean toward hers whenever they were in the same room. And Kendall? She was a mess. She snapped at their coworkers. She spilled coffee on her keyboard. She caught herself staring at the way his biceps flexed when he rolled up his sleeves, at the way his throat bobbed when he swallowed, at the way his lips. Stop it. She couldn't take it anymore. That evening, after everyone else had left, she cornered him in the empty office. The city lights bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Jaewoo was at his desk, his tie loose, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked up when she approached, his expression unreadable. "Stop it," she blurted out. Jaewoo raised an eyebrow. "Stop what?" "Flirting. Trying to seduce me." She crossed her arms, her nails digging into her skin. "It's not, we can't." Jaewoo let out a low, teasing laugh. "Kendall, I haven't done anything." "You know what you're doing," she hissed. "Even if I was," he said, standing up slowly, his voice dropping to a murmur. "What does it matter? I'm just Minji's little brother, remember?" Kendall's chest ached. "That's not. Isn't it?" He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "You've spent years treating me like I was invisible, like I was nothing. And now you're acting like I'm the one who's crossing the line." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she had seen him, just not the way she was seeing him now. But the words stuck in her throat. "I don't even know how to look at Minji anymore," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Not after that night." Jaewoo's expression softened, just for a second. Then his jaw tightened, his eyes burning with something raw. "You want to know how to make this bearable?" Kendall swallowed. "How?" "Stop fighting it." His voice was rough, urgent. "We're both torturing ourselves, Kendall. Every look, every almost touch. It's killing us. The only way to make this work is to stop pretending we don't want it." Kendall's heart pounded. "We'd be lying to Minji. Would we?" Jaewoo's gaze didn't waver. "I'd tell her." Kendall's eyes widened. "You what?" "I'd tell her," he repeated, his voice steady. "I don't like hiding. Not from her. Not from anyone." "No," Kendall shook her head vehemently. "Absolutely not. We are not telling Minji. Or anyone else." Jaewoo studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. "We wouldn't have to tell her. It's not a lie if we don't say anything." Kendall's mind raced. "I didn't say I agreed to this." Jaewoo's smile deepened. "No, you didn't." She opened her mouth to argue, but he was already closing the distance between them, his hand cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed against her lower lip, and her breath hitched. "Okay," she whispered. Jaewoo's eyes darkened. "Okay." And then he kissed her. It was like striking a match in a room full of gasoline. Kendall melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. The kiss was desperate, hungry. A collision of everything they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Jaewoo rested his forehead against hers. "We keep this between us," he murmured. Kendall nodded, her heart still racing. "Between us." Jaewoo smiled, pressing one last, lingering kiss to her lips before pulling away. Then, without another word, he grabbed his jacket and held out his hand. Kendall took it. And together they walked out of the office, into a secret neither of them could resist. Their secret relationship became a series of stolen moments, each one more intoxicating than the last. There was the small, dimly lit restaurant tucked away in a corner of the city, where the owner knew Jaewoo by name and never asked questions. The booth in the back was their sanctuary. Candlelight flickering across the table, Jaewoo's foot brushing against hers under the tablecloth, the way his fingers would trace patterns on her palm when he thought she wasn't looking. They'd linger over dessert, feeding each other bites of chocolate cake. Their eyes locked in a silent conversation no one else could understand. And when the bill came, Jaewoo would always insist on paying, his hand resting on the small of her back as they slipped out into the night. Then there were the nights at Kendall's apartment. The way Jaewoo would show up unannounced, his jacket still damp from the rain, his eyes dark with want. They'd barely make it past the doorway before his mouth was on hers, his hands tangling in her hair as he backed her against the wall. The first time, Kendall had been nervous, afraid of what it would mean, of how it would change things. But Jaewoo had whispered against her lips, "Let me love you," and she'd been lost. Mornings were the hardest. Waking up to the scent of him still on her sheets, the imprint of his body beside her. They'd make breakfast together. Jaewoo burning the toast, Kendall laughing as she took over, their shoulders brushing as they moved around her tiny kitchen. But the clock was always ticking. Soon they'd have to leave to step back into the roles they played for the rest of the world. Some days they'd arrive at the office together. Jaewoo's car parked a block away so no one would suspect. They'd walk in separately, only to meet at the front door, pretending surprise. "Oh, Kendall, I didn't see you there," Jaewoo would say, his voice light, his eyes glinting with amusement. Kendall would play along, rolling her eyes, but the thrill of the lies and to shiver down her spine. It was a game, one they both knew the stakes of. And for now the risk was part of the excitement. Then came the day Elijah walked into the office. Elijah, Malik's cousin, Kendall's ex-boyfriend. The man who had once known her better than anyone, before life and distance and unspoken truths had pulled them apart. He was all easy smiles and familiar warmth, and when he spotted Kendall, his face lit up like she was the only person in the room. "Kendall Williams," he said, his voice rich with amusement. "I was starting to think you'd disappeared on me." Kendall laughed, the sound genuine, unguarded. "Elijah, what are you doing here?" "Business," he said, leaning against her desk. "But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping to see you." They fell into easy conversation, the kind that came from years of history, shared jokes, old memories, the kind of shorthand that only existed between people who had once been close. Kendall didn't notice the way Jaewoo's pen stilled in his hand, or the way his jaw tightened as he watched them from across the room. But then Jaewoo was there, inserting himself into the conversation with a question so trivial it was almost laughable. "Kendall, did you see the email from accounting?" His voice was light, but his eyes were stormy. Kendall glanced at him, sensing the tension, but she didn't call him out. "Not here. Not now. Not yet," she said smoothly. "I'll check it after this." Elijah, oblivious, just grinned. "I'll let you get back to work." "But Kendall," he turned back to her, his expression softening, "I'd love to take you to dinner. Catch up properly. There's something I want to discuss with you." Kendall hesitated, but only for a second. "Dinner sounds great." Jaewoo's expression darkened, but he said nothing. Not then. Kendall found him waiting outside her apartment that evening, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. The moment the door closed behind them, the dam broke. "You accepted his invitation?" Jaewoo's voice was low, controlled, but the anger beneath it was palpable. Kendall sighed, tossing her keys onto the counter. "It's just dinner, Jaewoo. He wants to talk about a business proposition." "A business proposition?" Jaewoo scoffed. "You expect me to believe that?" "It's the truth." Kendall crossed her arms. "Elijah isn't a stranger, Jaewoo. We have history. But that's all it is, history." "Oh, I know he's not a stranger," Jaewoo snapped. "I know exactly what he is. Your ex. But I'm the one in your life now." Kendall's patience frayed. "Elijah is my friend. And I'm not going to treat him like he's some kind of enemy, just because you have a problem with it." Jaewoo's eyes flashed. "Are you sure that's all he is to you?" Kendall threw her hands up. "Jaewoo, it's been years. There's nothing between us. And frankly, I'm tired of you acting like a jealous boyfriend over something that doesn't even matter." Jaewoo's voice dropped, dangerous. "I am your boyfriend." Kendall's breath hitched. The word hung between them, heavy and undeniable. But she didn't back down. "Then act like it. But not like this. If you can't handle me having a normal conversation with an old friend, then maybe we shouldn't be doing this at all." Jaewoo went still, his expression shuddering. But the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. Kendall softened just a little. "I'm not choosing him over you. But I am choosing peace. If you can't deal with that, then we're going to have a problem." Jaewoo didn't say anything, but the silence between them was louder than any argument. A few days later, Elijah's business proposition was finalized. And with it came another invitation, this time for coffee. Kendall hesitated, but in the end she went. Elijah was waiting for her at a quiet cafe, his usual easy smile in place. But there was something different in his eyes today, something serious. "I've missed you," he said once they were seated. Kendall's stomach twisted. "Elijah." I know. He held up a hand. "I'm not trying to make this awkward, but I need you to know something." He took a deep breath. "I never stopped loving you, Kendall, and I know why you were with me back then. I know it was never really about me." Kendall's heart pounded. Jaewoo. He must have said something. But how? Elijah continued, his voice soft. "And I know why you ended things. But I also know that if you're giving me a chance to work with you again, maybe it's a sign. Maybe we're supposed to try again." Kendall stared at him, her mind racing. She thought of Jaewoo's words, his jealousy, the way he'd looked at her like she was his whole world. And she knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't give Elijah what he was asking for. "I can't," she said gently but firmly. "Elijah, I care about you. But not like that. Not anymore." Elijah studied her for a long moment. Then to her surprise he smiled. "I had my suspicions. But hearing you say it," he shook his head, chuckling. "I knew it. There's someone else, isn't there?" Kendall didn't answer. She didn't have to. Elijah's smile turned wistful. "He's a lucky man." Kendall's eyes widened. "Elijah, I mean it." He reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "I just want you to be happy, Kendall. And if he's the one who does that for you, then I'm happy for you." Kendall's throat tightened. "Thank you." Elijah nodded, releasing her hand. "Now go, before I change my mind and try to steal you back." Kendall laughed, but as she walked out of the cafe, her mind was already on Jaewoo. She pulled out her phone. "Yeah. Lien his number." He answered on the first ring. "Kendall, meet me," she said. "Now." They met at a motel on the outskirts of the city. Somewhere no one would think to look, somewhere they could be themselves. The moment the door closed behind them, Jaewoo was on her, his mouth crashing against hers like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Kendall melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. The fight, the tension, the doubt, it all dissolved in the heat of his touch. Afterward, as they lay tangled in the sheets, Kendall's phone rang. She groaned, rolling over to check the screen. Her mother's name flashed across it. Jaewoo propped himself up on one elbow, watching her. "Aren't you going to answer?" Kendall hesitated. She didn't want to go. But her mother had a way of making her feel guilty even through a phone call. With a sigh she answered. "Hey, Mom." Her mother's voice was warm but firm. "Kendall Marie Williams, I haven't seen you in weeks. You're coming to dinner tonight." Kendall's stomach dropped. But she knew that tone. There was no arguing with it. "Fine," she said, already dreading the excuses she'd have to make to Jaewoo. "I'll be there." As she hung up, she turned to Jaewoo, her expression apologetic. "I have to go." Jaewoo's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Family first." Kendall cupped his face, pressing a soft kiss to his lips. "I'll make it up to you." Jaewoo's hand slid down her back, pulling her against him one last time. "You better." And as Kendall dressed, her mind was already racing with the lies she'd have to tell to keep their secret safe. For now. Kendall had spent the entire week dodging her mother's calls, inventing excuses, work deadlines, last-minute trips, a fictional migraine, anything to avoid the inevitable. But her mother, ever the strategist, had outmaneuvered her. Dinner. Tonight. No excuses. And worse, her mother said, "I've invited someone special for you to meet." Kendall groaned, pressing her palms to her eyes as she stood in her bathroom, staring at her reflection. 32. As if that number was a ticking time bomb, as if her worth was somehow tied to a ring on her finger. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. "You're not getting any younger, Kendall. It's time to settle down." Like she was a car past its prime, losing value by the day. She had half a mind to call in sick, to fake a flat tire, to disappear. But her mother had already booked the weekend, a barbecue, family, friends, and of course the suitor. A man her mother had handpicked. A man Kendall had no intention of giving a single second of her time to. But as she pulled into her parents' driveway, her stomach dropped. Jaewoo's car was there. No. She took a deep breath, smoothing her hands over her dress. Okay, you can do this. Just avoid him. Smile, nod, and get the hell out of here as soon as possible. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. The moment Kendall stepped into the backyard, she was ambushed. Her mother, beaming, pulled her toward a tall, well-dressed man with a practiced smile. Kendall, this is Daniel. Daniel, this is my daughter. Daniel extended a hand, his grip firm, his eyes appraising. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Your mother speaks very highly of you. Kendall forced a smile, her mind already racing for an exit strategy. Likewise. But then she saw him. Jaewoo was leaning against the fence, a beer in hand, his expression unreadable. Their eyes locked, and for a second, the world around them faded. Then Minji appeared at his side, her arm linked through his, her voice bright. Kendall. You made it. Mom was starting to think you'd bail. Kendall's smile tightened. Wouldn't dream of it. Minji grinned, oblivious. Good. Because your mother's been dying to introduce you to Daniel. Isn't he perfect for you? Kendall's jaw clenched. Perfect. Right. Jaewoo's grip on his beer bottle tightened, his knuckles white. Kendall could feel the tension radiating off him, could see the way his eyes darkened as Daniel laughed at something her mother said. His hand resting a little too familiarly on Kendall's arm. This is a disaster. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, Jaewoo's brother, Jihoon, and his wife Sujin arrived. Sujin's smile was polite, but her eyes were cold as she greeted Kendall. It's been a while. Kendall nodded, forcing another smile. Yes, it has. Sujin's gaze flicked to Jaewoo, then back to Kendall, her expression unreadable. Jaewoo mentioned you've been busy with work. Kendall's stomach twisted. Oh, he did he? But before she could respond, her mother clapped her hands, drawing everyone's attention. All right, who's ready for some food? Kendall exhaled, her shoulders sagging in relief. Food. Distractions. Maybe she could slip away unnoticed. Then Jaewoo was beside her, his voice low, his breath warm against her ear. You look beautiful. Kendall's heart skipped. Jaewoo. Don't, he murmured, his hand brushing against hers. Just play along. Kendall wanted to argue, to tell him this was a terrible idea. But the way he was looking at her, like she was the only thing in the world worth seeing, made her breath catch. Damn him. The barbecue was a torturous game of avoidance. Kendall did her best to keep her distance from Jaewoo, but every time she glanced his way, she found his eyes on her, dark and possessive. Daniel, meanwhile, was the picture of charm, regaling her parents with stories of his impressive career, his impeccable taste in wine, his bright future. Kendall's mother was ecstatic. He's perfect for you, Kendall, her mother gushed, pulling her aside. Smart, successful, stable. And he adores you. Kendall forced a laugh. Mom, we just met. And? Sometimes you just know. Kendall's stomach twisted. Sometimes you just know. She excused herself, slipping into the kitchen under the pretense of fetching more drinks. The cool air was a relief, the quiet a balm. She leaned against the counter, pressing her palms to her eyes. Just get through this. Just a few more hours. Then the door swung open. Jaewoo stepped inside, his expression stormy. Without a word, he crossed the room, backing her into a corner, his body pressing against hers. I can't watch this anymore, he growled. Kendall's heart pounded. Jaewoo, we can't. But then his mouth was on hers, his kiss desperate, hungry. Kendall melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. For a second, the world outside ceased to exist. There was only this. The heat of his body, the taste of him, the way her heart raced when he touched her. Then, Kendall, there you are. Her mother's voice cut through the haze like a knife. Kendall froze, her eyes widening in horror as she pulled away from Jaewoo. Her mother stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of shock and delight. I think I chose very well, her mother said, her voice warm with approval. Daniel is. He has no chance with her. Jaewoo's voice was low, firm, his eyes never leaving Kendall's. Her mother's smile faltered. I'm sorry. Jaewoo stepped forward, his hand finding Kendall's, his grip tight. I said he has no chance. Kendall's already seeing someone. Kendall's breath hitched. What is he doing? Her mother's eyes flicked between them, her expression a mix of confusion and hope. She is. Kendall opened her mouth, but Jaewoo squeezed her hand, his voice steady. Yes. She is. Her mother's gaze sharpened, her voice dropping to a whisper. And who is this person? Kendall's mind raced. Lie. Lie. But the words stuck in her throat. Jaewoo's thumb traced circles on her palm, his voice calm. Someone who loves her. Someone who knows her. Kendall's mother's eyes widened, her gaze flicking between them, her expression unreadable. And, does this someone have a name? Kendall swallowed hard. It's complicated. Jaewoo's grip tightened. It doesn't have to be. Her mother's eyes narrowed, her voice sharp. Kendall Marie Williams, what is going on? Kendall exhaled, her heart pounding. Mom, I am seeing someone, but, soon. And I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Her mother studied her for a long moment. Then her gaze flicked to Jaewoo, her expression softening. Well, I suppose that's something. Kendall's breath escaped in a rush. Oh my God. She believes me? But then her mother's eyes gleamed with mischief. But if this mystery man of yours doesn't work out, Daniel is still available. Kendall groaned internally. Of course she did. The rest of the barbecue was a blur of tension and stolen glances. Jaewoo barely spoke to anyone, his eyes fixed on Kendall like she was the only person in the room. Daniel, oblivious, continued his charm offensive, but Kendall's mind was elsewhere, on the way Jaewoo's hand had felt in hers, on the way his kiss had set her on fire, on the way her mother's words had sent a jolt of panic through her. What if they find out? As the sun began to set, Kendall's parents cornered her, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. So this someone, her father said, his voice gentle. Are they serious? Kendall hesitated. I think so. Her mother's eyes lit up. Well, we'd love to meet them. When can we? Mom, Kendall cut in, her voice firm. It's new. We're taking things slow. Her mother sighed, but her father nodded, his expression thoughtful. Just be careful, Kendall. We only want what's best for you. Kendall's throat tightened. I know. Then before she could stop herself, the words tumbled out. What if the person I'm seeing is younger than me? Her parents exchanged a glance. Her mother's expression softened. Kendall, age is just a number. What matters is how they treat you, how they make you feel. Kendall's heart pounded. Even if it's a big difference? Her father shrugged. Love doesn't care about numbers, sweetheart. It cares about hearts. Kendall's breath hitched. Hearts. She glanced at Jaewoo, who was watching her from across the yard, his expression unreadable. Their eyes locked, and for a second it felt like the world had stopped. Maybe this could work. But then Sujin's voice cut through the moment, sharp and cold. Some differences are harder to ignore than others. Kendall's stomach dropped. Jaewoo's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. And Kendall knew this was far from over. The bedroom was quiet, the only sound the steady hum of the air conditioner and the faint rustle of the sheets as Kendall traced idle patterns on Jaewoo's chest. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting golden streaks across his skin. She could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her fingertips, and for a moment, she let herself pretend this was normal, that they didn't have to hide. Jaewoo's fingers tangled in her hair, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. His dark eyes were serious, the usual playfulness gone. I don't want this to be a secret forever. Kendall's breath hitched. Jaewoo, I want more, he said, his voice rough. I want everything. I want to take you out without hiding. I want to hold your hand in public. I want your parents to know. I want Minji to know. He cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing against her lower lip. I want a real chance, Kendall. With you. For real. Kendall's heart pounded. She had known, of course, that this them wasn't just a fling for him. But hearing him say it, so bluntly, so surely, sent a shiver down her spine. I need time, she admitted. My parents, Minji, they're not going to take this lightly. I need to prepare them, to make them understand. Jaewoo's expression softened, but his grip on her didn't loosen. How much time? A little, she whispered. Just let me figure out how to tell them. Jaewoo exhaled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Okay, but not too long. I'm not waiting forever, Kendall. She smiled, but her stomach twisted. What if they never accept it? What if Minji? As if summoned by her thoughts, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Minji. Hey, you free tomorrow? There's something I need to talk to you about. Kendall's fingers tightened around the phone. Oh no. Jaewoo noticed her tension. What's wrong? Minji wants to see me tomorrow. Jaewoo's expression darkened. She doesn't know. Not yet. Kendall bit her lip. But she will. And I don't know how. She's going to take it. Jaewoo's jaw clenched. She'll understand. Eventually. Kendall wanted to believe him. But the doubt gnawed at her. The next day, Kendall met Minji at their favorite cafe. The one they'd been going to since they were teenagers. The scent of coffee and cinnamon filled the air. But Kendall's stomach was in knots. She had spent the entire morning rehearsing what she would say, how she would break the news. But the moment she saw Minji's face, her best friend's usual warmth replaced by a tense, unreadable expression, she knew something was wrong. Minji didn't even wait for Kendall to sit down. So, she said, her voice sharp. You and my brother. Kendall's blood ran cold. Minji. Don't. Minji cut in, her hands gripping her coffee cup like it was a lifeline. Don't lie to me, Kendall. I saw you. At the barbecue. The way you two were looking at each other. She let out a bitter laugh. I can't believe I didn't see it before. Kendall's throat tightened. Minji, I was going to tell you. I needed time to figure out how. Minji's eyes burned. Time? Time? Kendall, he's my little brother. I know, Kendall whispered. And I swear I never meant for this to happen. It just did. Minji's expression crumpled for a second, but she steeled herself, her voice trembling. Is this about Hyunwoo? Kendall froze. What? Hyunwoo, Minji repeated, her gaze searching Kendall's face. You had that huge crush on him back in the day. And then he got married and you just moved on. Or so I thought. She swallowed hard. Are you with Jaewoo because he looks like him? Because you can't have Hyunwoo, so you're settling for his little brother. Kendall's chest ached. Minji, no. That's not. Because if that's the case, Minji's voice broke, then this is worse than I thought. Kendall reached across the table, her hand covering Minji's. Listen to me. Jaewoo is nothing like Hyunwoo. And I am not with him because of some unresolved feelings for his brother. She took a deep breath. I'm with him because he's Jaewoo. Because he makes me feel. She trailed off, her voice soft. He makes me feel seen, Minji. In a way no one else ever has. Minji's eyes filled with tears. But he's my brother, Kendall. I know, Kendall whispered. And I hate that it hurts you. But I can't. I can't pretend I don't feel this way. Minji pulled her hand away, her voice barely above a whisper. And what about me? Am I just supposed to be okay with this? With you and my baby brother? Kendall's heart shattered. I don't expect you to be okay with it. Not right away. But I need you to try. Because I love him, Minji. And I think he loves me too. Minji's breath hitched. For a long moment, she just stared at Kendall. Her expression a mix of hurt and resignation. Then slowly she nodded. You really love him? Kendall didn't hesitate. Yes. Minji exhaled, wiping at her eyes. God, Kendall. You better mean it. Because if you hurt him. I won't, Kendall promised. I won't. Minji's grip on her cup loosened, her voice softening. He's always looked at you like you hung the moon. Even when he was a kid. She let out a watery laugh. I should have known. Kendall's eyes burned. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Minji shook her head. Just don't hide it from me again. Okay. Kendall nodded, her throat tight. Okay. Minji took a deep breath, then reached for Kendall's hand again, squeezing it. Now, tell me everything. And for the first time in weeks, Kendall let herself breathe. That night, Kendall lay in bed, her mind racing. Minji's words echoed in her head. He's always looked at you like you hung the moon. She closed her eyes, remembering all the little moments she had dismissed over the years. The way Jaewoo had always been there, watching her with those dark, intense eyes. The way he had listened to her, really listened in a way no one else ever had. The way he had challenged her, pushed her, made her feel alive in a way she hadn't realized she'd been missing. And then there was the way he loved her. Not just with words but with actions. The way he showed up for her again and again, even when she tried to push him away. The way he fought for her, even when it seemed impossible. She had spent so long seeing him as Minji's little brother, as someone she needed to protect. But now she realized she had been blind to the truth. Jaewoo wasn't the boy she remembered. He was the man who had stolen her heart, and she was done pretending otherwise. Kendall sat on the edge of her bed, her phone clutched in her hand, her heart pounding. She had spent the entire night turning the conversation with Minji over in her mind, and one thing had become clear. She was done hiding. She dialed Jaewoo's number, her fingers trembling slightly. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm. "Miss me already?" Kendall smiled, but her voice was serious. "I've made a decision." "Oh." Jaewoo's tone shifted, sensing the weight in her words. "What kind of decision?" "I'm telling my parents," she said, her voice steady. "About us. And you should tell yours." There was a pause. Then softly, "You're sure?" "I'm sure," she said. "I don't want to live in the shadows anymore, Jaewoo. I want us. And if that means facing the fallout, then that's what we'll do." Jaewoo exhaled, and she could practically hear the smile in his voice. "Okay, then we do it together." Kendall's parents were in the living room when she arrived that evening, her father reading the newspaper, her mother knitting in her favorite armchair. The moment Kendall walked in, her mother looked up, her eyes sharp. "You're home early. Everything all right?" Kendall took a deep breath. "I need to talk to you both." Her father set down his paper, his expression growing serious. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Kendall sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I'm seeing someone." Her mother's eyebrows lifted. "Oh? And who is this someone?" Kendall swallowed hard. "Jaewoo Park." Silence. Her father's face paled. "Minji's brother?" Kendall nodded. "Yes." Her mother's knitting needle stilled. "Kendall. I know it's unexpected," Kendall rushed on. "But I love him, Mom. And he loves me. And we want to be together. Really together." Her father rubbed his temples, his voice strained. "Kendall, you know we love you. And we like Jaewoo. But, his family. What about them?" Kendall's voice was tight. "They're our friends," her mother said, her voice gentle but firm. "And they might not take this well. Especially with the age difference." Kendall's stomach twisted. "So that's it? You're worried about what they think?" "No," her father said, his voice softening. "We're worried about you. Kendall, you're 32. Jaewoo is what, 23? 24? He's still young. And you can't afford to wait forever if you want a family." Kendall's chest ached. "Dad, I know what I want. And I want him." Her mother sighed, setting her knitting aside. "We're not saying you can't be with him, sweetheart. We're just concerned about how this will affect everyone." Kendall's hands clenched. "So you're not against it?" Her parents exchanged a glance. Then her mother reached for her hand. "We want you to be happy. And if Jaewoo makes you happy, then we'll try." Kendall's breath hitched. "Really?" Her father nodded. "But we do have one condition." "What?" "We want to meet him. Officially." Her mother smiled, though her eyes were still worried. "Your father and we'd like to have you both over for dinner. Next weekend." Kendall's heart swelled. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll tell him." Jaewoo had known his parents wouldn't take the news well. But he hadn't expected the coldness. He sat them down after dinner, his hands steady, his voice calm. "I have something to tell you." His mother set down her teacup, her expression already wary. "What is it?" "I'm in a relationship," he said. "With Kendall Williams." His father's chopsticks clattered against his bowl. "What?" "You heard me," Jaewoo said, his jaw tightening. "I'm with Kendall. And I'm not ending it." His mother's face paled. "Jaewoo. She's 9 years older than you. And," Jaewoo's voice was sharp, "she's perfect for me. And I'm perfect for her." His father shook his head. "She's a wonderful woman, son. But this won't work. You're too young. You have your whole life ahead of you. And she's at a different stage." Jaewoo's hands curled into fists. "I know what I want. And I want her." "And what happens when you realize you want different things?" his mother asked, her voice trembling. "When you want children and she does want children," Jaewoo cut in. And if that's what we decide, then we'll have them. But that's our decision, not yours. His father's expression hardened. We won't support this, Jaewoo. Not when we know it's going to end in heartbreak. Jaewoo stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Then don't. But I'm not changing my mind. He looked between them, his voice low, final. You can either accept it, or you can lose me. But I'm not walking away from her. His parents didn't respond, but the silence was answer enough. That night, Jaewoo showed up at Kendall's doorstep, his expression stormy. She let him in without a word, pulling him into a tight embrace. That bad? She murmured against his shoulder. Jaewoo let out a bitter laugh. Worse. Kendall pulled back, cupping his face. I told my parents. They're willing to give us a chance. They want to have us over for dinner next weekend. Jaewoo's expression softened just a little. That's good. But. Kendall searched his face. My parents, he exhaled sharply. They're not happy. They think this is a mistake. That we're not compatible. Kendall's heart ached. I'm sorry. Jaewoo shook his head, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Don't be. I told them I wasn't backing down. And I meant it. Kendall smiled, but her eyes burned. We'll get through this. Jaewoo pulled her close, his voice a whisper. Together. A few days later, Kendall's mother called. We've set the date for dinner. Next Saturday. And Kendall. Her voice was hesitant. We'd like Jaewoo to come early, so we can talk. Before things get complicated. Kendall's stomach twisted. Complicated. Your father and I. We just want to make sure you know what you're getting into. With his family. Kendall's grip on the phone tightened. Mom, we do. Then prove it, her mother said, her voice gentle but firm. We'll see you both at 6. The night before the dinner, Jaewoo took Kendall out. A real date. No hiding, no sneaking. Just the two of them, walking through the city under the soft glow of the streetlights, his hand in hers, their shoulders brushing. They ended up at a small rooftop restaurant. The city sprawled out beneath them like a sea of stars. Jaewoo ordered wine, his fingers tracing circles on her palm beneath the table. You're nervous, he observed. Kendall laughed softly. Terrified. Don't be, he said, his thumb brushing against her skin. We'll be fine. Your parents. Fuck my parents, Jaewoo said, his voice low but fierce. This is about us. And I'm not letting anyone, not them, not anyone, ruin this. Kendall's breath hitched. Jaewoo. He reached across the table, his hand cupping her cheek. I love you, Kendall. And I'm not going anywhere. Kendall's eyes burned. I love you too, she whispered. Jaewoo's smile was soft, triumphant. Then that's all that matters. They walked back to Kendall's apartment in comfortable silence, their fingers intertwined, the night air warm around them. The moment they stepped inside, Jaewoo backed her against the door, his mouth crashing against hers. Kendall melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Jaewoo rested his forehead against hers. No more hiding, he murmured. Kendall smiled, her heart full. No more hiding. Jaewoo kissed her again, slow and deep, like he was memorizing the tea. Asked of her. Tomorrow, he said, his voice rough. We tell the world. Kendall's fingers traced the line of his jaw. Tomorrow, she agreed. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a storm on the horizon. Felt like theirs.